My sister raised her glass and said, clear as daylight. Where's your husband and kids? Oh, right. You don't have any. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it cut deep. My parents smiling like it was harmless fun. My fork frozen midair. I'd spent years paying their bills, saving their home, and now I was the punchline at their table. Tell me your city and the first family bill you ever covered without a thank you. When I got back to my loft in Fremont, the city lights felt colder than usual. My building was quiet, like it was holding its breath. I dropped my keys into the glass jar on the counter, the same jar that held years of receipts. Each one, a tiny record of love I'd been taught to pay for. Rent notices, credit card statements, carreaux, co-pays, all with my name on them. The digital photo frame blinked beside it. Cycling through old family pictures. My parents smiling at Christmas. My sister, posing in another borrowed designer dress. Me, half cropped out on the edge of every frame. It never stopped on one of me alone. Not once. I watched the loop 3 times just to be sure. The smell of burnt toast lingered from the cafe below. It mixed with the silence of my apartment. I stood there thinking about that dinner. About the way the air had turned heavy right before the laughter. It's strange how something as simple as a joke can feel like a slap when you've built your whole life trying to keep everyone else comfortable. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window. Outside, a delivery truck hissed past, its brakes whining like they understood something I didn't. My hands were still trembling. But not from hurt anymore. From realization? You know what? They never tell you about harmless teasing. It isn't harmless. It's a slow kind of corrosion. First, they joke. Then they minimize. Then they remind you that you're lucky to still be included. That's how cruelty hides it. Dresses itself up as family humor. You laugh along. Because if you don't, you're the one ruining the mood. That's the trap. The trap of normalized cruelty. It starts with laughter and ends with you apologizing for not having thicker skin. For years, I thought their jokes kept us close. But all they did was keep me small, obedient, manageable. The reliable one who never pushes back. I looked at the reflection of the photo frame in the glass. My sister's face froze mid-laugh. Like even the pixels knew what she'd done. When they laugh first, you apologize. Second, I whispered. That was the rule in our house. I didn't even know when I'd learned it. It was just there. Like the smell of my mom's coffee. Or the sound of my dad's sigh when I said no to another loan. The worst part wasn't the insult. It was the familiarity of it. The way my mom's smile had turned soft and practiced. Like she'd done it before. The way my dad's chuckle had carried that note of agreement. They weren't just laughing at me. They were reminding me where I stood. For years I'd believed that my job was to make sure no one else fell apart. I was the steady one. The backup plan. The safety net that caught everyone else's mess. That belief had become so ingrained. I couldn't tell where it ended, and I began. That's what happens when help turns into identity. You forget you were ever allowed to have needs of your own. I glanced at the receipts jar again. Every folded piece of paper was proof of that identity. Small sacrifices. Logged and dated. Building a version of love that only worked one way. The frame blinked once more. The photo changed to another family dinner. Another roast chicken. Another empty chair beside me. I turned it off. The screen went black. And for the first time, so did their faces. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the moment at the table. I just sat in the quiet, tracing the condensation on my glass, feeling something inside me shift. The laughter from earlier still echoed in my head. But this time, it didn't sting. It clarified. They had made the joke. I had made the life that paid for theirs. And starting now, that balance was about to change. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain wouldn't stop clicking through every transaction I'd ever made for them. The next morning, I sat at my desk with my laptop open and the light from the screen cutting across the room. Cold. Blue. Surgical. I started by opening my banking app. Then I opened a spreadsheet. Then another. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I clicked cancel. Every autopay. Every recurring transfer. Every quiet little bleed that kept their lights on and kept me small. There's something strange about taking your power back. It doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like numbers disappearing from a screen. I watched as the list of scheduled payments vanished. Mortgage. Insurance. Emergency fund. Done. I even went into our shared grocery app. Deleted my card. And stared at the empty payment slot. It looked cleaner without me. I stopped making their morning coffee. I thought, it wasn't petty. It was overdue. Then came the real work. The receipts jar. I poured it out across my table. Little slips of my own history, spilling like confetti. Tuition payments. Medical copays. Just until next month. We'll pay you back soon. I started to sort them. Category by category. Like building a case. When I added it all up, the number was obscene. $126,400 over 6.5 years. The digits blurred together until they stopped being math and turned into memory. The time I missed a promotion call because I was wiring rent. The Christmas, I skipped my own trip to cover theirs. The longer I looked, the more I realized this wasn't generosity, it was conditioning. A habit dressed up as love. Here's what no one tells you about being the responsible one. You think you're helping, but slowly, you become the infrastructure for everyone else's comfort. It's called parentification, when you start parenting the people who were supposed to raise you. It feels like duty. It feels like love. Until it doesn't. The signs are always there. You're the first call when something breaks. The last to be thanked when it's fixed. You say yes because you're good at holding it together. You tell yourself that good daughters don't keep score. But you do. Quietly. In jars and email threads and late-night balance checks. That's the hidden cost of being dependable. You spend your peace keeping everyone else's afloat. And when you finally need help, the room goes silent. I leaned back in my chair. The receipts spread around me like evidence. Each one whispered the same thing. You did enough. You've always done enough. By the time the clock hit midnight, I had every file labeled. Every cent accounted for. Every autopay gone. For once, the silence in my apartment didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like proof. I closed my laptop and whispered to no one in particular. I counted every transfer. Then I counted myself in. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First, a text from my mother. You forgot the mortgage payment. Everything okay? Sweetheart. Then my dad. The house transfer didn't go through. Call me immediately. Then my sister. Predictably. Hey. Can you Venmo me rent's due? I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I flipped the phone face down and let it vibrate against the table until it stopped. I thought silence would bring relief. Instead, it felt like a test. How long could I hold out before old reflexes kicked back in? By noon there were voicemails. By evening, a flood. Mom's voice trembling. Dad's sharp with anger. Brooks half accusing. Half pleading. By the end of the week, the tone had shifted from concern to command. You can't do this to your family. You owe us after everything we've done for you. That word owe hung in my head like smoke. I'd spent years paying what they called love. Rent disguised as gratitude. Interest on affection that never matured. I scrolled through the messages, thumb hovering over each one, and started saving them. Screenshots. Voice memos. Date stamps. Every single thing. Not out of spite, out of instinct. Somewhere deep down, a voice whispered. This isn't over. You're going to need proof. They say respect your parents. But respect isn't a birthright. It's a receipt. And I'd paid mine. With time. With money. With silence. The next text was shorter than the rest. Come home Sunday. We need to talk. No greeting. No question. Just an order. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. My pulse slowed. Steady and deliberate. If this was the confrontation they wanted, fine. I was done playing defense. Respect is earned by repair. I murmured to myself. Not requested by rank. For years, they'd used that rank like a weapon. We're your parents. Show some gratitude. But gratitude doesn't excuse theft. Love doesn't demand proof of loyalty every month. I turned the phone over again. Set it beside the jar of receipts. And finally exhaled. The air in the apartment felt heavy. But different charged. Waiting. That night, I brewed a cup of coffee just for me. The bitter smell filled the loft, cutting through the static of all their voices. They thought silence would make me cave. But silence, it turns out, can be armor. The messages kept coming through the weekend. I read every one, then dragged them into a folder labeled Evidence. By Sunday, my decision was already made. I wouldn't go there to defend myself. I'd go there to end it. The phone buzzed again, Dad. This time, we expect you at 6. I typed a single word back. Noted. Then I shut off the phone. For the first time in years, the jar of receipts wasn't the loudest thing in the room. The quiet was. And it wasn't guilt anymore. It was preparation. Monday morning. I was already at my desk before sunrise. The sky over Fremont was gray. The kind that makes you question if the sun ever really plans to show up. My inbox blinked with deadlines. But my focus wasn't on work, it was on war. Not the screaming kind. The methodical kind. I opened a new email and typed a name I'd bookmarked months ago, but never thought I'd use a financial fraud attorney. Her name was Rachel. Her tone on the phone was calm. Surgical. Like she'd already seen versions of my story 100 times. Bring everything, she said. Statements. Transfers. Screenshots. Receipts, especially if there's any document with your name on it that you didn't sign. When I arrived, her office smelled like toner and lemon disinfectant. The steady hum of a copier filled the background. Rhythmic. Almost comforting. She handed me a folder labeled with tabs. Hellock. Line of credit. Inquiries. I told her everything, how I'd been sending money for years. How I'd just cut them off. And how the messages had turned from guilt to threats. She listened without interrupting. Then she leaned back and said, "We're not dealing with a family dispute, Regina. We're dealing with a potential fraud case. You're not emotional, you're factual. Treat it that way." For the first time, someone said it plainly. Not family drama. Not misunderstanding. Fraud. She outlined what we'd do next. Each step, clean and practical, gather evidence. Pause. All transfers. Consult counsel. And put it in writing. That was her phrase, put it in writing. It sounded simple. But it felt like armor. We drafted a letter together, a formal, 21-day remedy notice. Precise language. Polite tone. Hard edges. It demanded that my name be removed from all accounts, and any misused funds be repaid. The kind of letter that doesn't need shouting, because the law speaks louder. When I left her office, the weight on my shoulders had shape now. Paper shape. Legal shape. At work. I logged in. Ready to drown in user feedback surveys. When a red notification flashed on my screen. Compliance alert. Unusual credit inquiries tied to your employee ID. For a second, my stomach dropped. Then I clicked it open. The audit note was vague, but enough to make my pulse pound. I dug deeper. The credit check had come from a marketing agency, one that had recently partnered with a local influencer for a sponsorship campaign. The name on the application stopped me cold. My sister. It wasn't deliberate theft. Not exactly. Just carelessness. She'd filled out a sponsorship advance using a saved form from my laptop. The same one I used to pay her rent months ago. Same Wi-Fi. Zame Autofill. That tiny digital laziness had pinged our internal system. A soft pull. But big enough to flag my employee record. I sat there staring at the screen. Heartbeat, syncing with the flicker of my cursor. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd touched my job. I leaned back in my chair and whispered. Of course. When I got home that evening, I printed the letter. White paper. Black ink. Date. Signature. Deadline. I folded it cleanly. Pressed the crease with my palm. And slid it into an envelope. Before sealing it, I read it one last time. Every sentence was a boundary with teeth. Then I whispered the 2 lines I'd rehearsed. Where's your money? Sis, because mine just stopped flowing. And softer. Steadier. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a door I control. The printer light went dark. My apartment was still. It was time to stop being their safety net and start being my own witness. Sunday came faster than I wanted. The drive to Spanaway felt different this time. No rehearsed smiles. No mental pep talk to keep the peace. Just quiet. Steady breath. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. Their house looked smaller than I remembered. Same flickering porch light. Same live. Laugh. Love sign by the front door. Its paint starting to peel. Inside. The kitchen hummed with the same fridge that had run through every argument we'd ever had. My mother was setting the table. Her movements sharp and practiced. My father sat at the head. Hands clasped like a judge. My sister leaned against the counter. Scrolling her phone. Pretending not to notice me. Regina. Mom said. Still not looking up. We can't live like this. The mortgage. The bills. You know how hard it's been? I hung my coat on the back of a chair. I know. I said evenly. I've known for 6 years. Dad's voice cut in. Low and firm. Don't start. This family depends on you. You've always helped. Why stop now? Because it's not help if it's expected. I said. That's called obligation. Mom's hand trembled as she folded a napkin. You're being cruel. I met her eyes. No. I'm being honest. Brooke let out a laugh without looking up from her screen. Wow. Someone's been watching too many empowerment videos. Congratulations. Sis, you found a backbone. I turned toward her. Calm. You know what's funny? You mock me for not having a husband or kids. But you've lived off me like I'm your second parent. Her head snapped up. Excuse me. Enough. Mom said. Voice rising. But I kept going. Dad. You always told me to be responsible. I took that seriously. You told me to protect this family? I did that. Too. But respect isn't automatic. It's earned. And I've earned more than silence and mockery. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Watch your tone. We are your parents. I looked straight at him. Then act like it. For a moment. No one spoke. Even the fridge seemed to stop humming. Then I set the folder down. The sound of it hitting the table made them all flinch. You want to talk fine? Let's talk. Inside were labeled dividers, tuition, carte repère, credit cards, medical bills, and finally, HELOC. These are records. I said. Every payment I've made since I started working. $126,400. You can check the math. Brooke scoffed. You're keeping score now. No. I said. I'm keeping proof. My father's expression hardened. This is unnecessary. Oh. It's necessary. I said. Because what happened after that dinner wasn't a misunderstanding. I slid a paper toward him. This is a copy of the home equity loan you took out. Using my name. The color drained from his face. That's ridiculous. The bank disagrees. I said. And so does my lawyer. Mom's hand flew to her chest. You brought in a stranger to turn against your own family. I met her eyes. You stopped being my family when you used me like a wallet. Dad leaned forward. Voice low. Almost shaking. You think you can threaten us? Not a threat. I said. A timeline. I slid another paper forward the remedy letter. You have 21 days to remove my name from every account and repay what you owe. If you don't, Rachel files. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome for guilt. Brooke's voice broke it first. You wouldn't. Try me. Mom's tears came next. Soft. Practiced. Sweetheart. We only did it to protect the house. You know your father's been struggling. I cut her off. And you thought I'd clean it up again. You didn't think you counted on it. Dad's shoulders dropped. We're your parents. And I was your insurance policy. I said quietly. Not anymore. Brooke sank into her chair. Eyes glassy. You're ruining us. I gathered the papers back into the folder. No. Brooke. I'm saving myself. I turned toward the door. Mom's voice cracked behind me. Regina. Please. We can fix this. I paused at the doorway. I spent years fixing things. You broke. This time. You'll fix them yourselves. Outside? The air hit like cold water. Through the window. I could see them frozen around the table. The folder sitting between them like a mirror they didn't want to look into. For once. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt free. A week later. My phone rang while I was making coffee. The number was unfamiliar. But I knew who it was. Before I answered. Regina Rachel's voice was calm. Almost gentle. Good news. The investigation's complete. The bank confirmed the forgery. Your name's cleared. You're no longer liable for any of their debt. For a second. I couldn't speak. The words felt unreal. Like hearing that gravity had suddenly stopped working. So, it's really over. Legally. Yes. She said. Then her tone softened. Emotionally. That's up to you. When the call ended, I stood there in my kitchen, staring out the window as the rain turned the city silver. My reflection looked different, lighter somehow. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt still. I reached for the fireproof pouch I'd bought after our meeting. The one that held copies of every document. Every receipt. Every message. My new ritual. Not paranoia. Préparation. I tucked the last file inside and zipped it closed. Later that night, I was scrolling through listings when one photo stopped me, cold my parents' house. The same peeling porch. The same coffee-stained walls. Listed for sale. A red badge flashing price cut. I didn't feel revenge. Just inevitability. When you build a life on someone else's sacrifices, eventually, it collapses. A week later, another message came. This one from Mom. One last dinner before we leave the house. Please come. He hesitated. Then went. Not out of guilt, but closure. When I arrived, the house was half empty. Boxes stacked against the walls. The air smelled like dust instead of Sunday roast. Dad looked older. Mom smaller. Brooke sat quietly for once. Her phone face down beside her plate. We ate in silence. No small talk. No pretending. Just the sound of forks on chipped plates. After dinner, I finally spoke. I'm not cutting you out, I said, but I'm not your safety net anymore. If you fall, you get up on your own. No one argued. Mom just nodded. Eyes wet, but understanding. For the first time, silence didn't feel like war. It felt like peace. When I left, I paused at the doorway and looked back. The house that had swallowed so many versions of me seemed smaller now. Almost fragile. Driving back to Seattle, I rolled down the window. The air was cold, sharp, and clean. The city lights glittered on the water. Reflections that didn't belong to anyone but me. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into work. Took the promotion I'd been offered months ago. Enrolled in a night course I'd been putting off. The more I said yes to myself, the quieter the noise around me became. One evening, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the skyline blush under the setting sun. The receipts jar was gone. In its place was a single folded slip, the first bill I'd paid entirely for me. I raised the glass to the city, to the reflection staring back, to receipts, I said softly, and to finally being Regina, not the backup plan. If you've ever been the one holding your family together while they tore you apart, tell me where you're listening from. Tell me the line you had to draw. And if this story gave you the words you needed, share it with someone who's still learning that saying no isn't cruelty. It's self-respect.